Things to remember: be recognized by the moderator before speaking. Turn on your microphones before you speak, and then state your name clearly, and be about 4 to 5 inches away from the microphone. Also, make sure you have your cell phones turned off. Thank you. The meeting is called to order. Okay, let's do a roll call. Karen, you want to do a roll call? You want to start? Okay, Doug?
Marissa Phillips, Heart of Missoula. Catherine Auger, Lower Rattlesnake.
Julie Stephenson, University District.
Colleen Beal, Lewis and Clark.
Ray Aiden, Far East Petty Canyon.
Jack Walton, Miller Creek, present.
Jeff Stevens, South 39th Street Neighborhood Council.
Kathleen Gamar, Rose Park, present.
Tim Karst, Moose Canyon Gully.
Ron Larson, Grant Creek. Mark Foss, Southgate Triangle. Ed Mulder, Northwood Neighborhood.
Do we have a quorum?
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a motion to adopt the minutes or the agenda for the meeting?
Ray Aiden, I move adoption of the agenda.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Motion carried. Okay, do we have a approval for the minutes?
Doug Graham, I move that we approve the minutes as
Colleen Beal, Lewis and Clark, second.
Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, at this time, we have public comment for non-agenda items. So this is for people in the audience or members of the forum.
Hi, I'm Ben Brewer with Development Services. I'm a planner here, and I'm just here to announce and to invite you to the next public meeting for the Design Excellence Program, which we'll be holding that the third week of March. The Design Excellence Program aims to develop a new set of standards and guidelines for development and commercially zoned properties in the downtown area and along certain commercial corridors in the city. The meeting will be an open house format, and it will be an opportunity to learn and gain some information on the project and to offer any feedback and comments you have. The date for the workshop is a Tuesday, March 20th at 5:30 p.m. and it's going to be held at the Doubletree Hotel. So we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Yes, Karen?
I would like to note that Nick Shantz is here with the River Road neighborhood.
Are there any other public comments at this time? No agenda items? Okay, thank you. We'll go into our presentation. We have neighborhood fire-wise preparedness, wildfire, ready or not. Joe Toth?
Two.
Two.
Those Member Pines. Hello, greetings. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm glad to be here. This young man over here has already heard our presentation. Thank you for having me. I'm a member of a group here in Missoula called Missoula Elders for a Livable Tomorrow, and we've decided to put on a presentation that I think applies to almost every community or every part of our community, especially some of you who are more in what we know as the wildlife urban interface, Paddock Canyon, Grand Creek and stuff like that. But after seeing some of the wildfire devastation in the communities, especially in California, some others in recent years, I'm going to pass around a few things. I'd like to get these back to me. This is an early poster of what we're going to try to do in one of our first presentations, and just take those around. And then these, you could actually keep one for yourself. This just talks maybe about our first, no, it has a couple of our meetings, and then the Grand Creek, yes. So, how many of this? 1, 2, 3, 4, well, here, if we have extra, you can keep one of those. And just to show you those pictures, this is very briefly, what we're looking at is, we all know that wildfire is part of what we live with in western Montana, and what we're looking at now is we've worked with some of the experts. We are fortunate here in Missoula to have some of the very experts that deal with this subject, especially for your home survivability. And we decided to do something that would maybe help people out a lot in our group. And so what we're looking at is putting on these presentations. So I'm just here tonight to announce those presentations. We have 3 of them lined up so far. We're trying to get this developed into more of a package. So if neighborhood councils or homeowners associations or some other districts or regions, especially out of our Missoula community, we've received interest from as far away as there's a group of homeowners clear up at Cooper's Lake, up by Ovando, and we're presenting this in a Bitterroot too, but that's been handled by some people in the Bitterroot, obviously from the Lolo Peak fire last year. Those 3 pictures I'm passing around is somebody who did the proper presentation or proper work for their house. That's, the first picture is the fire coming over the ridge. The second picture with her circled, her house is somewhere in that smoke of the fire, and the third picture is her house after the fire that survived it and all. And so what we want to do is just encourage everybody out there that those things that can happen in our neighborhoods is to make your house survivable. And we have some well-known speakers. Jack, who's coming, he's the main speaker that's going to be on this thing. He's basically the expert on it. He's retired out of the Forest Service, out of the Fire Science Lab out here west of town. And anyway, that's all I'm here to announce tonight. It's just that we have these presentations coming up. We have one with Molly. If most of you might or may not be familiar with the Molly courses over at the university, the Montana Osier Lifelong Learning Institute. And our first one is for Molly and their guests. So if you've ever been to a Molly course, you've ever been a friend of a Molly person, we probably would allow you. These are all free, open to all the public. And what we really want to do through these presentations is not only first get you as an individual homeowner to maybe do what you can to have your home survive potential wildfire, but work together as a community, as a neighborhood association to work toward making the whole community safer in a way, because many times there's been situations where 1 or 2 people have done what they thought was the right thing to do, and if one person in between them is still has created more fire hazard, then of course that fire is going to move into that. But anyway, that's what I said. Those 3 pictures are pretty neat. That was a woman, she's going to be presenting. She's a woman whose fires, that was last summer, that was the Lolo Peak fire, those pictures there. That woman's house survived the fire coming over the ridge, and she did the right mitigation things on her home. And that's basically what we're talking about when it comes to this presentation. That's all I really have for you tonight is that we are, I guess the other thing I'd have to mention, we are not getting into how to prevent wildfire, whether we should have more fires and less fires, any of that thing of what the Forest Service should be doing on the land. whether we should be logging it, burning it, any of that. Our aspect is basically home safety and the things that all of us could do to make our homes safe if a fire comes through it. We all know with the changing climate of our world that fires are going to be with us. They've always been with us. We live in a fire ecology, northern Rockies things. You can throw a map, you can throw a dart at a map, and of anywhere in western Montana, and the scientists say over a 500-year period of time, that wherever your dart lands, that will have burned over time. We're not going to see summers of no fire. That's unrealistic. And so so now our next step is how do we live with wildfire and how do we live safely with wildfire, and that's our whole presentation are coming up. And we thought the neighborhood councils would be the perfect avenue to get some of this information out there. We are open to receiving information from any individual neighborhood council who wants more of this information. We have a pretty good resume of videos available. We are working with all the agencies in the local fire agencies through the Missoula County Fire Protection Association, City Fire, Rural Fire, and tying in some of the outlying districts. Like we're starting to work more with Sealy and well, Frenchtown's already been part of it through the Missoula County Fire Protection Association. On a side note, that's where I retired. I retired from the fire department, so I was pretty familiar with all those associations. So that was it, quick and dirty. Just kind of an information thing, and that's what we want to get out to the neighborhood councils, and I'm happy to take some questions.
I just wanted to make a comment that those pictures are in my neighborhood, and I lived through that fire and survived.
Oh, good for you. And had you done mitigation procedures on your home or your area around it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to get to too. And how you can help, what you can do to help. And if you're in the Missoula Rural Fire Districts, one of the things we're going to present out there is they have some cost sharing or some financial assistance. And there's some financial assistance things out there too, because a lot of homeowners are, that's of course what faces all of us in our world is financial information. So, yeah, well, congratulations. I'm glad it was, and I'm, yeah. And I heard somebody said from the Patty Canyon. Somebody over here is from Patty Canyon? Or was that? Well, but I mean, I don't know, I'm an old guy. I remember the Patty Canyon fire, from ages and ages ago. I was young enough to be around in this area. So, it happens right here, and a lot of people who live in central Missoula sometimes don't think, not my problem, I'm living on Mount Avenue in the center of town. Well, as we will find from some of the information, these embers can carry miles and miles. And as some of the things from the Waldo Canyon fire in Colorado Springs, Santa Rosa, California last year, as we found, some of these fires, if they get into the urban area, then all of us can be vulnerable. So, anyway, that's all I have for you tonight. I don't have a lot of. I just encourage everybody to attend one of these if you have constituents within your neighborhood group that would perhaps be affected by any of this. And we all know fire seasons are, because of our changing weather, are just going to be longer, hotter, and drier. I mean, we're not going to be without fire. I mean, we hated this last summer with the smoke and stuff. I'm sure all of us did, but it's not like that's going to be the only summer we have like that.
Ron?
Yes, sir.
Ron Larson, Grand Creek. I appreciate your efforts. I was just thinking other educational items concerning fire, like the university alumni series.
I went to that yes.
And I think it's just a really good time to be thinking in those terms. And since one of these events will be held at the Best Western on Grand Creek, then we'll do what we can to promote.
Well, do you know Wendell? Because Wendell was working with us,
Yes.
and he's the one that's why we're doing the best. Basically, Wendell was carrying the torch for you guys up Grand Creek, and it was a good thing and stuff like that. I mean, because we do have some vulnerable areas around Missoula, not only the center of town, Grand Creek, Rattlesnake, Paddock Canyon, which does have an escape road, of course, over into Deer Creek and out, O'Brien Creek. I mean, some of these, not only is it the homeowners there, I mean, they're one way in, one way out, so.
Are there any other questions?
Any other questions? Any information?
Can I have an extra card, please?
Oh, you betcha.
Okay.
And I apologize, we're right in the way of actually creating a poster. This is not what our end-up poster is going to look like at all. We've actually found a much greater picture. We're going to have posters posted around. We're going to have the information on the mauling sites. And if anything else, I think there's some contact information on, if not on Melt in here. But anyway, let's just all stay fire safe. We're going to have to live with fire. And the other good news about all of this is that this young lady over here can attest to, if we get our ducks in a row, your home can be okay. Your home can survive through some of these pretty horrific fire situations. Anyway, thanks for your time, and have a good evening, and
Thank you.
good luck.
Yes, Karen?
I would like to note that Anthony Joe with the Captain John Mullen and Michelle Cares with as the Community Forum Liaison are here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next presentation is University District Neighborhood Character. We got Tom Zavik, City of Missoula. Thank you.
I'm going to need a minute here, it looks like. Okay, I'm Tom Zavitz. I'm with Development Services, and I apologize for missing you last month, and thanks to Michelle for filling in. That was much appreciated. I'm not sure what you passed along, but I'm trying to fill in the gaps a little bit. About 2 or 3 years ago, the university district started seeing some extra large homes being built and having some older homes torn down. And these photos that I have here are not from the university district, and I'm trying to avoid singling out any particular buildings, but and in the rest of the country is calling this these McMansions, but they're homes that don't seem to fit in with the character of the rest of the neighborhood. Some places are okay with that. I think probably most neighborhoods that start to see this kind of development are probably not. And it became concerning to the university residents about 2 to 3 years ago, after 2 or 3 of these larger homes were built. And the residents came to Gwen Jones and asked her if there was anything they could do to preserve the character of their neighborhood. And she, knowing that we had in our growth policy directives to look at that, and that we have an overlay tool in our zoning that is meant just for preserving neighborhood character, she decided that she would try and take this up. And she wanted to do it in a kind of light-handed way without going to a full set of building standards, or like what color can you paint your house, and causing development to go to a design review board possibly. So she came to the city had asked us to start looking at some potential tools. So one of the things I want to try and make sure that you are all clear with from the beginning here is that we have people occasionally come in to our office and say, hey, there is a huge house going in. How can you let that happen? And the words are, we have zoning. Why aren't you making them follow zoning? And we say, well, they are following what the zoning allows. So let me explain that really quickly. So this is an old Sanborn map of some home footprints in the University District, in which they're pretty similar to these now. And so you can see that the homes on the parcels take up, a fairly small area of the parcel. The building envelope that zoning allows and has allowed since the early 30s is a space that takes up most of the lot, and you can see that in the highlighted one here. And so if you look at a, say, 7.5-foot side setback on either side, 20 foot in front, and there's a 20 feet setback in the rear as well, but for garages it's much less than that. So over the years, when homes were built within the setback, it was kind of like these are the maximum, this is a maximum, this is where you can build to. And most people didn't build to those, did not fill up that entire envelope. Well, times have changed, property values have gone up, some people like much larger homes, some people really want to be in a certain neighborhood, but they really want a bigger home. So they have begun to, in several cases, fill this entire building envelope. And that's okay, because we've said for 80 years, this is where you can build on a parcel. It's just that people over time just have tended to not do that, and mostly probably for economic reasons. So today we are starting to see some people come in and say, well, I either want to add on and fill this envelope with building, or I want to tear down a home and fill this building envelope. And you all may know of some examples like this, but so that was what became concerning to the neighborhood, and they knew, and they found out that we had tools that they could possibly use if everyone agreed to them to keep the character of the neighborhood as it has been. And they have a historic neighborhood, so there are some other factors involved here. Here's another illustration of what I'm talking about. Here's a typical house that's 2-story, maybe 2,000 square feet, and with a garage at the alley. Again, they over time tended not to fill that building envelope, but now we're starting to see homes that fill that building envelope and can look like big boxes in these neighborhoods. So to keep this short, Gwen has conducted a couple questionnaires. She's formed a subcommittee, and a lot of work went into trying to decide what we could do to prevent these without a full-blown type of development standards for new and redevelopment in her neighborhood. So the first thing they wanted to do was to say, we don't want to see 2 homes torn down to build one big one. And the way we decided that we could get to that was by restricting the parcel size. So typical parcel size in the university neighborhood is 60 feet by 130 feet. So that is what the new regulation will say, is that you cannot build on a parcel that is bigger than 60 by 130 feet. And we feel that that will prevent people from tearing down 2 houses next door to each other and then building one big house, because they will then have created a parcel that's bigger than 60 feet by 130 feet. increase corner lot street side setback from 10 to 15 feet. Currently, if you're on a corner, you can build to 10 feet of your property line on a street side, on the not the primary street, but the secondary street. In the 30s, the zoning originally said 20 feet on that street side. It was changed in the 50s to be 10, and the neighborhood feels like it wants to get back to something closer to that. And they want to reduce the height also right at that street side setback. So they're thinking about 25 feet right now at the 15-foot setback. For the larger homes, and you know there are several, many really large, like Victorian-style homes on really big lots in that historic district, and there is some worry that those could be taken down and that their large lot, which can be as much as half a block, would be filled with, could be filled with any types of, you know, maybe several single-family homes or something that doesn't fit the character of that historic district. So they're asking that those large lot setbacks be maintained if any development is to occur on those large lots. Maintain those existing setbacks. And then the fourth one is to have a consultation with the historic preservation officer, and that is to, what they've found in the neighborhood is that when somebody comes in and just decides to do one of these houses, they haven't consulted with neighbors, with anybody that could offer them some advice on fitting into the neighborhood. And we have a historic preservation officer who is really well versed in how the neighborhood was originally developed and what kinds of development would fit with the character of that. Now that doesn't require them to do what the historic preservation officer says, but they at least have to sit down with them and they can get a background of the neighborhood, and possibly, we know that not everybody will take that advice, but we know that some people will. So that's just a consultation, doesn't require anything more than that. So this would apply in the university neighborhood. Their neighborhood somehow extends over and around Mount Sentinel, up this Kim Williams Trail, really almost to East Missoula. But the area of concern is right here next to the university. The historic district obviously is to the north and to the corner up there, and that historic preservation officer consultation would only be required if your development is within the historic district. Here's a closer view of the area that we were considering having this cover, but we realized that the university area neighborhood extended practically to East Missoula, so this map isn't quite up to date, but it's a little closer view. So what they've done so far, winter 2016, they brought this up at their neighborhood meetings. Summer, the first questionnaire, working group in the winter of 16, 17. They then went to the LUP, Land Use and Planning Committee, to update them. Went back out to the neighborhood to make sure that they had support for doing this. They asked everyone for comments. They got 115 responses. 100 of those 115 were for doing something. There were only 15 against. And so last November, we went back to the Land Use and Planning Committee, and they directed our staff to take these draft tools to Planning Board and to get a recommendation from them. So there will be a public hearing on, I right now tentatively scheduled for April 19th at the planning board. But keep an eye on that because they are very busy right now, and that might change. So there'll be a public hearing there, and then we will go back to Land Use and Planning Committee and the City Council for the final hearing after that. Do you have any questions?
Ray?
Okay. So Tom, who guided the process? Gwen started it, but then did the development department office guide it after that? I mean, if somebody else in another area wanted assistance or guidance on how to do this, who led it?
Gwen led it. It was her, she brought it into us and asked, is there, what could we do? And she knew about our growth policy, that it promoted this, and that she knew about that there were tools available. But the neighborhood, I will say this, and she did this at the request of the neighborhood. This is not an easy thing. The university neighborhood has had trouble trying to do something similar to this in the past. And so she wasn't exactly super anxious to take it up, but there was enough concern that she felt like, and she had concern too, so she came and and she has to get the support of the Land Use and Planning Committee in order to do this, in order to allow the planning staff to spend time on this, to make this a task. So she had to show that there was enough concern to do that, and she did. She'd done a lot of footwork and did the 2 questionnaires, and she ran a subcommittee from their neighborhood district, at least 3, if not 4 meetings over the winter. So any council member could do this, by the way. If they're willing to put in the work and to show that they have the support, then they have to convince the city council that there is enough concern as well for the city council to say, okay, the city will make this a task and spend staff time on it. So the city didn't lead this, no.
Michelle?
I would say that regardless of my personal feelings of the project, there are council members who asked about the ability to template it. Some who thought that they couldn't support it unless it was easier for other neighborhoods to do. And so maybe there will be some movement there before this is said and done. I don't know.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, so we tried to keep those tools to be fairly light and basic so that if there were other neighborhoods that decided that they were going to take up this task, that these could be used in other neighborhoods and that they wouldn't be just specific to just working in one neighborhood.
Any other questions?
Okay, and I'm going to introduce the next item as soon as I can get this down and the next one up. So I can't remember. I think I have been here 6 months or a year ago to talk about some planning efforts that were going on the Brook Street corridor. At that time, I was talking about a study that we had won a grant to do some initial planning in the Brook Street corridor, and that Brook Street report that was done in 2016, we got a grant to hire a consulting company from Denver to start to identify what some of the troubles on Brook Street were, and to kind of identify a vision for what the people that live and the businesses that are in that neighborhood might want to see to make it kind of more user-friendly. And I probably gave you an update on this report, and so that was completed about a year and 3 or 4 months ago. Is that right? And they identified some issues on the corridor. At the same time, I think that Mountain Line was thinking about increasing service or looking at changing service along the corridor. And so at the same time, we had just finished the growth policy in Missoula, and there were some wishes to have some community centers identified in the city, places where maybe residential development could take place around transportation nodes or employment centers, and how could we make some nodes and all across the city more transportation oriented or development for transportation, and so that people wouldn't have to have a car, they could live near nodes where they could find services and things. So all these things kind of came together over the last 2 or 3 years, and this report was kind of the first formal planning effort, and it just identified issues along the Brook Street corridor. And that's available on our website, the city website, if you'd like to look at it. It's very good and easy to read. But you can see a couple of the issues: improved pedestrian crossings. There are a lot of short streets and odd-shaped parcels along the street that might be able to be vacated or sold or traded to property owners along the street. There's the potential transit changes coming. And then there's the design guidelines project, or the design excellence project that we're working on right now, which would require buildings to be pedestrian friendly and built to some standards rather than in the way that we've seen some sort of just boxes built lately. So with all of those things coming together, we did this report, we had this report done, and then we had the next step for the planning group was the planning group decided, could we get a Tiger grant, federal highway money, to improve the corridor? And that would be in the multi-millions of dollars. And so the group decided to apply for one of these grants. In order to do that, you had to have an engineering study and some real good planning efforts. This group undertook that and has been using money from several different sources to hire the engineering consultant. And so right now we're in the process of beginning to write that grant and get information from the engineering consultant to start putting together that request for a grant. And so I brought along Aaron Wilson from the Transportation Department and Vince Caristo from Mountain Line to talk more in detail about what we're looking at, what this planning group is looking at doing. So I'm going to let them take over right now.
Thanks, Tom. Is this the microphone? Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Great. My name is Vince Caristo. I'm the project management specialist at Mountain Line. I've been there for about 2 years, and I'm going to give you some background on Mountain Line's interest in the Brook Street Corridor project and why it's so important to us. So first of all, Mountain Line, we are all of us who work at Mountain Line, 12 or so administrative staff, more than close to 50 bus operators. We're all really proud to provide public transportation to our community. Public transportation benefits everyone, whether or not you take the bus or not. For people who do ride the bus, they lead healthier lifestyles. Studies have shown that walking, even the small amount of walking to and from a bus on a daily basis adds up over time to healthier outcomes. They also reduce their household transportation costs. For everyone else, people who don't ride the bus, for every person that takes the bus instead of driving, everyone else in the community sees benefits in reduced traffic congestion throughout the entire community, reduced parking congestion in downtown, and improved air quality, which is a big issue here in Missoula. So in 2012, Mountain Lion worked with our community to develop its guiding vision and policy for improving service in the community. And the result was our long-range transit plan, which is shown here. The guiding principle in the plan was to focus our agency's resources inward in coordination with the city's growth policy that Tom mentioned, to create a complete transit system where transit is more convenient and usable for the greatest number of people. And so in the years since, we've been quite successful in doing that. So we've implemented 15-minute Bolt service on our Route 1, as well as 15-minute Bolt service on our Route 2. I'll show you, if you aren't familiar with our system map, the next slide, I'll show you what those look like. In addition to implementing our Zero Fare Partnership, which has been in place since 2015 and will continue for another 2.5 years, the result has been a dramatic increase in ridership. We're serving more people today than we have ever before, and people are using our service more often than ever before. Yeah. Question?
What percentage is ridership up since Fare Free went live?
It's about 70%, I believe. Now what's next for Mountain Lion? So in our 2012 plan, the next step for service improvements, you probably can't read it really well, but it's circled in orange on the slide. Essentially, it means bringing 15-minute Bolt service to our Route 7. Here's the map. Route 7 is the purple line on our system map, which starts at the transit center downtown, right across the street here, and travels south along Orange Street and Stevens Avenue towards the Southgate Mall, and then meanders through the neighborhoods down to Walmart. For reference, our Route 1, which we implemented 15-minute service on, I believe in 2013, is in brown on this map. It starts at the downtown transit center, travels south along Arthur, through the University District, and then west along South Avenue to the Southgate Mall. Route 2 starts at the downtown transit center, travels to Reserve Street, and then crosses the Clark Fork River at Russell Street, continues south along Johnson to the Southgate Mall. So right now we have a continuous ring of 15-minute service, which really circles the core of our city. And you can see why Route 7 is really attractive as a next option for a 15-minute Bolt service. One reason being it bisects our community, serves many residential neighborhoods, and also through here serves two major destinations in the Southgate Mall and Walmart. So the current study, the Brook Street Corridor Transit-Oriented Development Infrastructure Study, this is really the latest in a series of efforts that Tom described between Mountain Lion, the city, the Missoula Redevelopment Authority, our agency, and the city to bring 15-minute Bolt service to our Route 7 while at the same time encouraging smart infill and redevelopment along the Brook Street Corridor. There's really, from the transit perspective, from our Mountain Lion perspective, there's three components of the study that, for us. The first is figuring out a realignment of Route 7 that would bring it more directly along Brook Street. You can see here in gray, this is the current alignment of our Route 7. It travels along South Avenue, goes into the Southgate Mall, then travels south on Paxton Street, west on, I believe, 34th, and over to Walmart on 39th Street. It sort of meanders along Brook Street, but never goes on Brook Street. So one of the principles of transit planning is that transit works best when it's direct. And we believe that for our Route 7, that we can make a route that's far more usable, more efficient, and faster if it was more direct along Brook Street. And so we're looking at several different options for what that might look like, a reconfiguration that would, that would work the best, that would be the most successful and serve existing ridership as well as possible, while also bringing benefits of a more direct route. Sort of related to this, one of the reasons we're excited about this partnership in the study is that transit works well along streets and places that are walkable. If you've ever ridden the bus, you know that if you get on the bus at a bus stop on one side of the street in the morning, when you get off at the end of the day, you're going to be on the other side of the street. So transit users and bus stops are places where people cross the street a lot. So Aaron's going to talk about a lot of the road improvements and street improvements that will make Brook Street more walkable and make transit possible. The second part of the study for us is identifying the locations of bus stops along the corridor. Another principle of quality transit is that higher frequency service allows you to have bus stops that are spaced further apart. People will walk a further distance to transit that's fast and reliable. The more stops that we have along the route, the longer it takes us to get to where we're going, and the less reliable we can get people to a particular place at a particular time. So we're looking at a lot of different options for how we can align our bus stops with the with future nodes of development and activity along the corridor. And also how we can design our bus stops in a way that makes them really attractive and have a level of permanence and attractiveness that will encourage their use and also encourage development around them. The third part of the study for us is analyzing future locations for a transfer center. So right now at the Southgate Mall, we have a transfer center which is really the confluence of 6 routes of ours that all converge at the Southgate Mall. We calculated it once, and it's about 180 buses every day go through the Southgate Mall parking lot. And for those of you who know the parking lot, it's quite large. And if you add up all the miles that our buses drive circling the parking lot, because they can't go through every aisle like you or I could, comes up to something around, and this is not an exact figure, but around 80 miles a day of driving through the Southgate Mall parking lot. And that adds up over time for us. Our operations staff have recognized that having our transfer center located at the mall leads to increased fuel use, it's longer trips for passengers, it increases maintenance costs. So in planning a new Route 7 that's more efficient, more direct, more usable in this corridor, we feel like we could do better with the transfer center. And so we're looking at several different options for a transfer center that would help us develop more efficient service. Okay, so that's all I'll have. I'll leave it to Aaron.
You can say. All right, thanks. So for those of you I don't know or haven't met, I'm Aaron Wilson. I'm a transportation planner with the Missoula Metropolitan Planning Organization. And we're involved in this project primarily because of the transportation impacts that this will have or benefits. And Brooks Corridor is one of our primary transportation corridors in the Missoula area. And so when we started looking at this project, it started with thinking about transit and relocating Route 7 and 15-minute service, and then going into thinking about the land uses that might support that and changes that might occur along the corridor. But there are a lot of other factors related to transportation that are going to be impacted by this project, or that we need to address as we address those other things. There's a number of constraints that we're working with, and this study is really considering and looking at and trying to figure out how we deal with them. One of those is just the alignment of Brooks. It's not a perpendicular street. It runs diagonally through this neighborhood, so it creates a lot of really challenging intersections. And so that's something that's really hard for all modes, including transit, motor vehicles, bicyclists, pedestrians. There is a significant amount of vehicular traffic on Brooks, and so we need to think about how any improvements would impact that, or how we can maintain that level of service while also getting a lot of other benefits. That there are significant right-of-way limits on this street. So this diagram up here is showing the width of the right-of-way along Brooks on various parts of the corridor. And so this orientation can be a little disorienting if you're not used to looking at it. So this is, on the left end is Brooks Reserve intersection. And so then this is heading kind of northwest up to the Brooks and Mount intersection. So the closer you get to Reserve Street, we have plenty of right-of-way. There's 140 feet, and you'll notice that when you're driving there or walking there, that there is plenty of room there. There's a lot of good sidewalks, boulevards, parking lanes. And the closer you get into town, so as you hit Paxson Street, that right-of-way narrows down to 70 feet. So we have half the width currently that we do on that south end. And so that places some serious limits on what we can do within the right-of-way. And so that's something that this study is really looking at, is what can we do within that existing right-of-way if we want to make other changes? Where could we do creative either exchanges or purchasing right-of-way or purchasing additional right-of-way where landowners maybe don't need it, or we could do an exchange to get additional facilities. Those are all kind of hard questions, but things that we're looking at to think about how we can improve this corridor without having to necessarily impact any or negatively impact any particular mode, including motor vehicles. And then kind of the last challenge and constraint is there really are no good multimodal, so that's bicycle, pedestrian, transit facilities on the Brooks corridor today. There are some sidewalks along most of the Brooks corridor. There are places that don't have sidewalks, or they're so narrow that they are inaccessible to anyone other than maybe a young adult who is willing to risk walking along a 2-foot sidewalk next to 30 or 35 mile an hour sidewalks. So those are all kind of the constraints that we're working with as we moved into this project. And also just bringing it back to that point that Tom made about looking at transformational projects like a Tiger Grant, which are intended to be not only transportation improvements, but really transforming an area and generating some economic growth and really creating something much bigger than just the transportation facility. So those are kind of all the considerations that are going into the project as we're working through it. So I want to talk kind of about each of the different modes and what this project might mean for those as we explore different options. So today, motor vehicle travel, it's the primary use along this corridor because it's really the primary facility that's there. We don't have other facilities. As most of you know who have probably driven on Brooks Street, that there is some delay there, particularly at peak hours. That comes down to a few intersections that are doing, not as well as others, which is the Brooks Reserve has pretty significant delay. So these are all level of service. It's a measure that we use in transportation to say how freely traffic is moving. So it's a letter grade score. A is the best, freely moving traffic, very little delay. F is the worst, where you have significant congestion, and that intersection would be considered failing. So Brooks Reserve is kind of our lowest functioning intersection due to the volume that's there and the turning movements and where people are going and how that intersection operates. Most of the rest of the intersections are at a level of service C or better. C is kind of the average. It's what the State Department of Transportation uses as its baseline, that they don't want to see intersections go below that. One other intersection, I think that's at Brooks, Sussex, Oxford, functions at level of service D. So generally, as bad as volumes are there, it's not considered all that congested compared to other facilities around the country, or say the intersection at Brooks and Reserve. So, but going into this, we want to try to maintain that level of service as much as possible so that we aren't impacting the motor vehicle travel, knowing that this is an important corridor. For the non-motorized users, so those are bicyclists and pedestrians, there really are no facilities. So this is one area where we can see significant improvements along the Brooks corridor if we can get this project right. And these modes are really critical to transit because you have to walk from your residence or your business or your destination to the bus. And so having those facilities connecting transit stops to the final destination or start of that trip is really critical for transit to function appropriately. So that could mean both along Brooks in terms of improved sidewalks and bicycle facilities or connecting to brooks. And you can see a couple of these photos, there are people out there biking today. You often see people riding on the sidewalk. It's probably higher volumes than you would expect, but not nearly the rate that you see in other parts of the city. You can also see some of the constraints with the sidewalks, where you have very narrow curbside sidewalks if you have a traffic pole or something that further restricts it. So the distance here might be 3 or 4 feet. And so if you imagine if you're an individual in a wheelchair or other mobility assisted device, that's a really considerable barrier to moving along the corridor. So as I mentioned, the neighborhood connections, and this is where some of our other regional plans are really important, thinking about where we want those future connections to be. So not only getting along Brook Street, but getting to Brook Street. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can see this is from primarily from our bicycle facilities master plan, showing where all of the future connections could be so that you can get around Missoula. And today, really none of these exist, and very few, if any of these crossings exist. So Brooks, not only is it a barrier getting along it, but you can't really get across it. So that's really an impediment to transit or really redeveloping this corridor into something that could be more than it is today. But that's not to say that the corridor itself isn't important. We've seen some improvements already that are making it much better for those other modes, particularly at the south end of Brooks, where we have the Southgate Triangle, I believe, development, and some new facilities. There's new street lighting that is both for motor vehicles and for pedestrian scale, so that really makes it more inviting for people to walk there. Just making even some minor changes in terms of branding that area, trying to get it to help with redevelopment and feel like a place. And then, the other kinds of things we need to think about are increasing separation so people feel safe walking there. We just had a sidewalk workshop last night, and one of the things we hear a lot in those meetings is that people don't feel safe walking, and that is a huge barrier to getting out and actually taking more trips, and that people might be willing to do that if they had good, safe, accessible facilities. And so that's another way to reduce those traffic volumes and the congestion, is to get more of those trips to be other than people driving. So there are a couple of ways we can achieve that. One way is looking at our intersections. As I mentioned, the way Brook Street cuts through that part of town creates some particular challenges. As you know, a lot of the cross streets hit at an angle. That makes the crossings difficult. There's often not signals there, so people can't get across. It's not as safe to cross along Brooks there because of the angle. People can take those turns very fast. You can hit some of those turns probably at 30 or 40 miles an hour if you were ambitious and not being safe, and which is really, you're not going to see a pedestrian at that point. Pedestrians aren't going to feel safe. And so then people aren't going to feel safe accessing transit onto Brooks. So some of the intersection improvements that we are looking at are realigning those intersections so they're more of a 90-degree. That makes it safer for everyone, including the vehicles that are turning on and off Brooks Street. Pairing that with some new pedestrian crossings. So these could be just marked crosswalks with a pedestrian refuge in the median, like you would see on Stevens. It helps people get across because it shortens that crossing distance from 4 lanes to 2. There are a number of places where we might recommend pairing that with a pedestrian activated signal, like the rapid flashing beacons you might see more and more around town, just to give the warning to motorists that there is a pedestrian there. It increases the safety, and again, reduces the distance between crossings so that if you're being dropped off by transit or trying to get along the corridor, you can cross where your bus stop is. So with all of those improvements, again, coming kind of back to the big picture and what the hope for this project is that there really is a transformation along Brook Street. There's a lot of potential. It's in an urban renewal district. We're seeing a lot of change currently. And really thinking about how the land uses could change to help improve transit and make it more attractive for people to ride transit in those neighborhoods, what kind of development that would look like, where it might go. So some of the work of this study is looking at those trends. Where are we seeing development? What kind of development is out there? Is that supportive of transit today? And where we have parcels that may be ripe for redevelopment in the near future, and then working with those property owners or developers to get development that would really facilitate a better pedestrian environment, better for transit, and start creating a more vibrant multimodal corridor along Brooks. So that's kind of the big picture of this project. There are some transportation improvements that are spurring the conversation and wanting to get transit on in high-frequency transit. And then that has led into all these other conversations about how do you really make the corridor work for everybody, and how do you make it a more vibrant part of Missoula and redevelop that area and become kind of the real commercial corridor that it could be. So that's where we're at now. We're kind of in the middle. We're looking at a lot of different improvements at different locations and thinking about what Brook Street could look like and what that would take in terms of both funding and if there's right-of-way needs, and if we can't get that additional right-of-way, you know, what could you do in that existing space? So there's a lot of challenges, but I think we'll have some really creative solutions that will help get people in and around Brooks. So with that, if you have any questions, happy to answer.
Nick?
This is sort of a Mountain Line question. Are there, what's the sort of future of Mountain Line and electric buses? And then you talked about a transfer center on Brooks. Would this Brooks Transfer Center have like a charging station as part of it?
Sure. So if you didn't know, I'm happy to announce that we won a grant from the Federal Transit Administration last year to purchase electric buses and charging infrastructure. It was a smaller grant award than we had hoped for, but we were able to cobble together funding from other federal grant sources to purchase 3 electric buses. We're looking at delivery in early next year by the end of May of 2019. So the technology for electric buses has changed a lot. It's changing very quickly and has changed a lot in the past several years. We're at the point now, or the industry is at the point now, where we fully expect to be able to charge our bus overnight and then run it all day and come back home and charge overnight. Previous technology had relied on being able to charge a bus while it's on its route midway. That basically was a function of small battery sizes. So the university has an electric bus right now. Will be very similar to the ones that we will get, but they actually employ an overhead on-route charger, I think next to the music building. But we won't have one of those. We're going to have it all charged at night, overnight.
Michelle?
That's a different question.
The electric buses? They'll be the same size. Our buses are 8.5 feet wide.
Yeah, that's easy.
Okay, Michelle?
My questions are sort of, oh, she was just saying to hold the mic closer, but you're done for now. Next time, 4 inches is what they say. I have 2 kind of far afield questions that I hope you'll just humor me. One is regarding right-of-way between Stevens and wherever it currently reduces to two lanes. I forget what that intersection is. Mount. Yeah. Thanks. So there's a effort to reduce this next section between Mount and Stevens to fewer lanes also. And I've been hearing most of that in context of cars per day, and that the number of cars there is really quite low for as many lanes as it has, and that's one of the primary reasons why we should look at it. But I haven't remembered, I'm sure it's been said, I haven't remembered this idea about right-of-way and how that is a smaller section of Brooks, and I'm hoping that you can talk about how if we were to decrease lanes there, that would benefit this challenge, because I'm assuming it would. Could you?
Yeah, so in that section, it's a constrained right-of-way. I think it's between 70 and 80 feet in various sections of it, and you can see today there are places where the buildings come up effectively right, within 2 feet of the curb, and so there's virtually no sidewalk there. As you mentioned, the volumes there are well within the range of what 3-lane sections see all across the country. I think the current daily volumes are around 14,000 a day. That's compared to the rest of Brooks from Stevens on, where you're anywhere from 20 to 30,000 trips a day up to Reserve. So it was an option that came up during the 2016 study. It's been in the long-range plan as an option, and so people have been toying with that idea. What it would allow you to do is within the existing right-of-way, add in bike facilities, wider sidewalks, or even on-street parking potentially for the businesses there that would then allow, free up that space where businesses have on-street parking. You don't need as much parking for your business. You can do more with your parcel, so there's some benefits there. And you'd be able to do that without acquiring additional right-of-way, which is very expensive, and challenging at times.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's more compelling to me than there's just fewer cars, so we should change it. I don't know. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Can you go back to the picture that shows the dentist office? So it's my impression, but it's almost, I'm certain that it's hearsay, that building is that close because of setbacks on the other side. Can you confirm or deny this myth?
I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure. I think that may be the case, because there is residential on the backside of that, and I think you do need maybe some buffers. I'm not familiar enough to say for sure.
Okay, because that's so interesting, right? It's like they did what they had to do, and that's what we got, which is sucky.
And that's where the property line is, so it's, an allowable.
Yeah, true. I'm all about private property rights, and so that's interesting too.
Ben was in the current planning.
State your name for the record. Thank you.
This is Ben Brewer with Development Services, and I recently moved from the current planning section, so in the permits section, and I'm not sure if I understand the question entirely, but are you asking if it needed a setback on the opposite side, so it had to?
Yeah, I was wondering if it was required to be that close to Brook Street because of the setback on the opposite side.
That's not my memory of the project, though that could be wrong. But just to clarify, there is no setback in the zoning district, and so the building is to the property line, I believe, which is allowed by zoning. And so, in these situations where the right-of-way is narrow, it can create this effect. The other thing about that office is that my understanding is that it does have a 5-foot wide sidewalk, which is kind of the standard width for sidewalks in some areas. But since it has that pole, whatever the fixture is, that obviously narrows the width of the sidewalk, but that isn't necessarily taken into account when they're.
Still a myth then at this point.
That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions? Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your time. Okay, at this time, we have a request for neighborhood project funds reallocation for mud glass permeable pathway. Ray?
Yes. So let's, just for your knowledge here, if you flip into your report to the point where it says Neighborhood Council request for reallocated funds and continue on through that, you'll actually see, although a lot of the first part is not really the grant application, but actually the what that was required to be able to write about it. And finally, after you get through project schedule and budget, you will get to some attachments and pictures and the tasks. So you kind of end up back here in this section looking at it. So that was the application. It, along with, let's see, was it 12 applications, I think, total, were submitted. They were graded. The group the top 6 basically got all of, well, limited funds we had, which was covered the $18,000. So there was concern that this was really a good grant, but we just didn't have the money to cover it. And it was the next one down in the order. I guess it's been bubbling around. I missed a meeting or two of even here at Community Forum where it was discussed a bit. But the proposal now has come from your leadership team that we take $3,000 of our reallocated funds and fund this grant. And all right, that's probably going to lead to some questions. I'm seeing some confusion. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Nick?
I would just say MUD is in River Road neighborhood. They're really active on our team. They spoke with us about this project sort of early on and throughout the grant process, and the neighborhood leadership team is really in favor of this being funded. They're a great addition to our neighborhood, and I think this is just like another way that they show they're making our neighborhood and the city of Missoula better.
Yes, Anthony?
When this kind of requests usually go to a large neighborhood grant instead of a reallocation? I guess.
So that would be, are you asking if would it go to next year?
Right.
I think we wanted to feel like this was important enough to go, we have the funds to go ahead and fund it this year so that it would happen.
I see.
Okay. Michelle.
Because it did come through that and then was just it was the next one to get approved, but we ran out of funding.
Yeah, so if we were looking at the sort of the priority scale going down, they would have been number 7. And their score was not that different from number 6.
Thank you.
Okay. I have a question, Ray.
Yeah.
Is that MUD, is that a acronym for Municipal Utility District, or what is it? Because I'm familiar with other ones that were that way, so.
No, it's not. Do you want to answer? Yeah.
So it's the Missoula Urban Demonstration Project. So their sort of deal is they help folks. They have a big tool library, and they have they're located right with Home Resource there on Wyoming. So they do a lot of things. And I think one of the cool things about this project in particular was that they talked about this project being great for them, but like a great example of what Missoula could do with in lieu of traditional glass recycling. So this project uses crushed up glass. So, this project works out well, which I'm sure it will. This could be an example for other places in Missoula to use the same technology in their projects.
Jane?
And this is their first step, this area that they're doing. They're planning on doing a larger area and getting some more grants and feeding off this first grant and putting this in. And the glass is being donated. It's the other things that have an expense to it. So, and in case you're wondering, we have available in reallocated funds about $7,400. And so we usually get an additional $5,000 every July the 1st.
Okay.
So if I did my math correct, we would still have 4,000, let's see, 74, so $4,400 remaining in funds, correct? Did I
You're
do
asking
that
me to
right?
do math?
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, but anyway, we have encumbered funds for other things that have been approved already. So there are other funds there that have been encumbered, but the $7,400 is available, unencumbered.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So recommendation from the leadership team, the Community Forum leadership team, is that this be funded, so it's come from committee, I guess. I don't know. Do we need a second? Okay. Need a second for this to be voted on.
Doug Grimm, I second the motion.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on approval of the reallocation. Any discussion? Okay, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Whoops, you got to do.
Oh, yes.
Sorry. I have a question regarding the donation of glass. Would that be a public thing that anybody could donate glass once this got going?
As I understand it, the glass is already available.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, they've already got it. Thank you.
Okay.
It's special glass that's been tumbled, so it's not sharp. You know, there's this company that does that specifically. And they have a project that's been done in a large parking lot in Billings, so we're not the first.
Okay. Okay, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, Neighborhood Council and Community Forum, we have a nominee for Community Forum membership team. That's Mark Voss. So.
Well, I can answer any questions you have about me. Little background, I was born and raised in Missoula. I've been here all my life, 58 years old. Did 30 years with the sheriff's office, retired. Live in the Southgate Triangle area, and I'm fairly active in the leadership team there, mainly building parks and working on that stuff. So, if anybody has any questions, I'm willing to answer them.
And I can testify to the fact that Mark held it together during the last leadership team meeting, and it was an interesting meeting.
Doug?
I move that we accept Mark Voss as a new member of the Community Forum leadership team.
Is there a second?
Jeff Stevens, South 39th Street Neighborhood Council, have a second on the motion.
Okay, you get that, Karen? Okay. We have a motion and a second for Mark Voss to be on the Community Forum leadership team. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, and how many members does that make us?
That's 6, and the next item I'll take. Shall I?
Yes.
Okay. Community Forum Leadership Team. We have, our bylaws say we can have 3 to 7 members. And we are going to recruit for our 7th member, so we will have a full contingent. And is there anybody, well, what happens is you are nominated tonight, you can be self-nominated and voted on the following month. And I know that somebody has expressed interest in the past, but now they are an official Community Forum rep and can run for the leadership team. Is there anybody who would like to nominate themselves for Community Forum leadership team?
Marisa Phillips, Heart of Missoula.
Okay,
right.
Be ready for a speech next month.
Yeah. Keep it to 3 minutes.
Thank you for volunteering. Okay. Special events. Jeff Stevens.
Yes, I'm Jeff Stevens, South 39th Street Neighborhood Council. And the Missoula Outstanding Neighborhood Volunteer Committee met recently. There were 4 nominations this year, 2 for individual nominees and 2 group nominations. And I'll deal with the individual nomination selection first. And that person is Giles Thielen. And I'll read a little bit from the nominating letter that we received on him. Giles Thielen has lived in the Lower Rattlesnake neighborhood for more than 15 years. He's been volunteering for the neighborhood and Missoula as a whole for at least that long. He has volunteered for the Grizzly Triathlon since 1999 and is now the director. Giles was on the Mount Jumbo Advisory Committee from 2002 to 2011 and was the chair for most of that time. He has served on the Conservation Lands Advisory Committee as its chair since 2011. He operates a small landscaping business, employing several of the city's young people. Since 2006, he has annually paid his crew to pull weeds at Mount Jumbo for an entire day and organized neighbors to join in. Giles and his crew installed a Bruno Great White Park near the Madison Street Railroad crossing in 2007 and voluntarily continue to weed, seed, and maintain as seasons pass. Giles paid the Native Yards crew to pull poison hemlock from Bruno Park in 2013 and 2014. In 2014 and again in 2015, the Lower Rattlesnake neighborhood got grants from the city to landscape the newly created boulevards along Van Buren Street, the main entrance to our neighborhood. Giles had volunteered to be our horticultural advisor and used his professional status to get a discount on the shrubs we purchased. He worked all day, both years, and paid some members of his crew to help as well and used his trucks to haul soil and water. Now we have grass and flowering shrubs instead of weeds along Van Buren, and we couldn't have done it without him. So that's kind of a brief summary of what Giles has been doing the last number of years. Our other nominee in the group category is the Grant Creek Trails Association. The Grant Creek Trails Association was started in 2007 as an offshoot of the Grant Creek Neighborhood Council. The Grant Creek Trails Association worked closely with Missoula City Parks and Recreation to secure grants and funding from the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Recreational Trails Program, the Missoula Open Space Bond, and the Federal Community Transportation Enhancement Program. Two Fish, Wildlife, and Park grants totaling $32,795 allowed the association to build a section of the trail across from Grant Creek Hills. In 2008, the City Council approved expending $170,000 of the open space bond funding toward trail design, securing trail easements, and cost to cure items. About $94,000 of this funding allowed the association to complete preliminary engineering and design, plus cover the legal costs of establishing property easements. Remaining $76,000 paid for a portion of the trail's cost to cure items such as moving fencing and restoring landscaping. In addition to securing grants and other funding, the Grant Creek Trails Association began to solicit the private donations needed to meet the match for this federal CTEP grant that allowed construction to begin. The $180,000 collected by the Grant Creek Trails Association, largely from Grant Creek residents, made up 13% of spending on the city portion of the trail. And it goes on, this organization obviously was very instrumental in helping to create the Grant Creek Trail, which is, as you probably know, has been a major project for that area. And both of these nominations are action items, so we will need a motion in a second on these items. Any discussion?
Is there a motion to cover both of these nominations, one for the individual and the group award?
Having sat on the committee, I guess it'd be all right for me to make the motion, so be it. Ray Ayton, so moved.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Doug Graham, second the motion. Okay, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Yes, Jane.
I will be working on a proclamation within the next few weeks to go to City Council, and the awardees always get a tree planted in their honor and a proclamation by the mayor calling it, let's say last year it was Karen Sippy Day, and Outstanding Neighborhood Volunteer Month. So that will be coming up in the next few weeks. I'll keep you posted on that according to my work schedule.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we go to reports. Okay, staff report, Jane?
This will be my shortest one ever. Included in here, there is the item, review and update community forum bylaws. The bylaws were pretty well outdated, so I went ahead and updated them, and had the attorney review them and brought them to the Community Forum Leadership Team for approval and inclusion on the agenda. So they are on here right now with track changes on, so you can see the original with the changes that have been made. And according to our bylaws, this is the first reading. They'll be on the agenda next month, and you can discuss them. And then the following month, which will be in April, we can vote on what we decide on. Any questions on that? Okay, so it's, yes, Ray?
Rather than a question, just for people who, if you've not looked at a document like this before, if you see a vertical line on the left side, that's an indication that there's been some change within that space to the right. And it'll usually be marked by, let's see, how does this work on this one? If it's the new edition, is it underlined?
No, the old, what it said that's old is crossed out.
Okay.
The lines on the left, a lot of times, they can just be indicating a change in punctuation or a change in bullets, because I reformatted it. So it looks like every single word was changed, but it wasn't. So for example, it says, let's say, let me find something very simple in the beginning that I can look at. It says,
I think purpose is good.
at the bottom of the first page, at the last bullet, it says it used to say the community forum will. Now it says may submit a budget, and I crossed out A and changed it to budget requests. So it went from the community forum will submit a budget request for review by the mayor and city council as part of the annual budget review process. So that's been changed to the community forum may submit budget requests for review by the mayor and city council as part of the annual review process. So that's just an example of what the cross-out means. Does everybody understand that? Okay.
Maybe just worth noting too is that the biggest changes were the addition of the non-discrimination clause towards the end and the conduct of participants at meetings. That was, I believe, the city attorney suggested those, correct?
The conduct of participants at meetings, actually, I kind of borrowed that from city council, and it's on the sign right outside the door here. And we did change it a little bit to add that the presiding officer may ensure that these activities do not interfere with the conduct of the meeting. Attendees who do not observe these may be asked to leave the premises. And that goes along with the new Montana Code annotated law that's came into effect on January 1st, which says you cannot prevent anybody from coming to a meeting. But if somebody's being disruptive, you can ask them to leave, but you can't say you're permanently banned.
So this is the first reading then, and then...
Next time.
Actually, it's your homework.
Yes. Okay. Karen?
I am going to pass around this community forum moderator form again. We need someone to sign, 2 people to sign up, one for May and one for July. So we'll send that around. And then I was also going to mention more about the upcoming bus tour. It's scheduled for April 19th. We're going to visit Rose Park, the University District, Riverfront, Heart of Missoula, the North Side, and the Upper and Lower Rattlesnake. And so we have everything we need from Heart of Missoula, Lewis and Clark, Riverfront, University District, Captain John Mullen, and Franklin to the Fort. We do need some more information back from Farview's Patty Canyon, Grant Creek, Lower Rattlesnake, Miller Creek, Moose Can Gully, North Side, River Road, Rose Park, South 39th, Southgate Triangle, and the Upper Rattlesnake. So if I haven't already given you a form as you came in, please see me afterward, and I'll get that form to you to let you know what exactly we're still missing from your neighborhood. All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Now we'll have the neighborhood council report. We'll start with Doug.
Okay, well, we held a meeting in the Upper Rattlesnake at Messiah Lutheran Church on February the 11th, and we covered an awful lot of items, but it started easily because we were serving pizza, and we talked about Smart 911, where you can use your cell phone to get connected to emergency services. Trout Unlimited talked about removing the old, about 100-year-old Montana Power Dam, which used to supply all the water for the city of Missoula. We talked about the Syringa Bike Park, and the two roundabouts that are going in on Van Buren Street, around where the interstate crosses, and the noise wall that's going in along the interstate to keep the noise from the cars and trucks from going in to the neighborhood and bothering them. And so I guess we had talked earlier about having a leadership team meeting in early September. Thank you.
So, Marisa Phillips, Heart of Missoula. This week, we got to talk to Officer Ethan Smith about our Little McCormick Park and the homelessness issue in our neighborhood. So he had some interesting things to say. The police department is working in conjunction with the 316 and trying to better the situation in that part of the neighborhood. Let's see. We talked about the bus tour, which is really exciting. And our neighborhood is on the tour, so look forward to that. I believe that's almost everything we went over, other than planning for our general meeting, and I got to become a part of Community Forum, so thank you.
Thank you. Ed Mulder, Riverfront Neighborhood. We had a leadership meeting at Bernice's Bakery on February 12th. We went over the traffic calming on Wyoming Street through the Old Sawmill District, and the average speed is 37 miles an hour. It's supposed to be 25, so they're trying to work on that. We also talked about California Street's going to have a revitalization on it, and it's kind of dangerous right through between 3rd Street and Dakota, and all the way through to the river. So they're working on one phase has already been developed, but they're working on that area that's kind of right by Bargain Corner and down the hill there by the Dakota Street. And the WGM group is working on that, and they're going to get back to us in a couple months on some alternatives, and they've been talking with the public, and we'll be back meeting with, or getting back to us on our leadership team in a couple months on that. And then we worked on our what areas of our neighborhood we're going to include into the bus tour, and
And and we have a meeting on April 19th, a general meeting. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, you have a question by Michelle?
Sorry, California Street, I'm curious if you could say a little bit more, because we've heard about that as a problem and dangerous street for so long. So you said that WGM is looking into maybe drawing plans, and like, who's gonna pay for it? Tell me more.
Maybe Jane can help with that answer. I know that that there's some grants possibly that have been
Yet to be identified then?
for that,
Is
yeah.
that- well, it's in the district, but I didn't know they're taking it on.
I believe there isn't any, Jane Kelly, I believe there isn't any funding for it, but they want to have it completely ready in case they are able to get some funding for it. So, because it is such a dangerous area there, and it really needs to be worked on. So they are doing the plan.
Thank you.
Catherine Auger, Lower Rattlesnake. The only thing to report, we submitted a letter to the city voicing concern over the intersection at Front and Van Buren, where the Van Buren footbridge is. And I believe we worked on that jointly with the Upper Rattlesnake, the Joint Transportation Subcommittee. So that was submitted to the city from the Lower Rattlesnake. And that's it.
Thank you.
Julie Stephenson with the University District. This is my first community forum meeting. I found it really enlightening, and thank you. We discussed our bylaws. We're currently looking at those and may possibly amend them, similar to what the community forum is recommending with the new language for the non-discrimination language, as well as meeting behavior. Not that we've really had any problems, but just to have that included, that language. We are hoping to have another speeding study conducted by the Missoula Traffic Office. We had one conducted at the end of the year, and the students were not in session, and we primarily wanted the study done because there's so much traffic on Maurice all the way down to Beckwith, and there were different animals that were killed and ran over, and just a lot of issues. And we feel like there's too much speeding. So the first result came back, and they recommended that we just enforce the speeding regulations. And so we felt like we needed to look at that and perhaps have another study done in the near future. Now that the students are back in session, we can compare those numbers and then try to figure out if we just need more, more signage posted, or what our next steps are.
Which streets are those?
It's Beckwith, and I think is it up to 4th Street? It's on Maurice primarily, is where all the speeding is occurring. And people are just going up and down. The pedestrians are, they're always, it's just a very treacherous area. There's a lot going on that road. We looked at our calendar for the upcoming year, and we are hoping to maybe schedule things ahead of time for our general meetings, like the first week in May and the first week in October. That's still getting discussed. And our next meeting is March 12th. That's about all I have. Thank you.
Colleen Beal with Lewis and Clark. We have lots of things going on. Our last leadership meeting was on February 7th. We have been really busy organizing ourselves into discussing traffic calming. We have lots of things going in that direction, and still in pursuing seeing about what can be done, if it's just additional crosswalks or if actually we need to have some calming circles built in some of our neighborhoods. Also, Bancroft Pond, which is now the name of the duck pond, we've been very busy on that. Lots of support from Park and Rec. We've had lots of ideas and concerns, and our neighborhood's been very active. As you know, Bancroft Pond is a kind of a wild area, and we want to kind of maintain it to be kind of a a natural outlet here in Missoula. And so we've got some things that we're working on so we can enhance that experience for our schools, because our kids come from the schools and do experiments, the big kids, the high school kids, that we oftentimes have college kids, and then the little kids come and watch the ducks and talk about how they come and do their thing. And we are also pursuing some signage, and we just have a lot going on. We have an action committee that we've set up for the pond, and we're involving some educators here in town are part of our committee, and we also have, the city has also been helping us with that, and we also have the Wildlife Federation and the weed control? Anyway, we have quite a few people that are very interested in helping us get our pond functioning and being really good for the city of Missoula and our neighborhood. We have a general meeting scheduled for March 21st, and our next leadership meeting is scheduled for March 7th. Thanks.
Okay, Farview's, Patty Canyon, Ray Aiden. I think the major thing is that we're planning towards a neighborhood council meeting that will be the Thursday, the 5th of April. And we're continuing with trying to figure out with Parks and Rec about what will happen to the Forest Service building. We've gotten some estimates now, and unfortunately, it looks like demolition is far cheaper than moving, and so that may be what's going to happen to it, which is too bad. It's quite a historic building, but there's not funds, and it's deteriorating. And the second thing is, on the other side, is that Ningpata Park continues to be a really interesting new potential for us in Farviews. The water company is going to be abandoning the tanks that are on one side of the area, so it could turn out to be quite a good-sized park, and that's exciting.
Nick Johns with River Road. There's a bunch of sort of things happening in our neighborhood right now. There's a new police and evidence facility moving in, and I think they've just moved in. The YWCA is looking at moving into our neighborhood, which is exciting. The Russell Street project is maybe for reals going to happen and starting soon. We've also been talking a lot about Wyoming and in that corner at Wyoming and Russell, and getting a light in there, sort of like handling some of our traffic. So I wonder how that light will affect the speed happening on your side of Wyoming, because I can't imagine that's going to make it any better. So maybe our neighborhoods could work together on solving a lot of those, or at least talking about it. We had our general meeting on February 13th at the new Garden City Harvest facility, the River Road Farm there, and it was really nice. It was a great place to meet. They had good technology, and they were very welcoming. So I'd encourage anybody, for any reason, looking for a meeting space. It was good. They treated us well. Our next leadership meeting is on March 21st.
Jack Walton, Miller Creek. We've scheduled our leadership meeting for March 6th at Fire Station 5 on Lower Miller Creek. And we have a couple of things on the agenda. One is an individual wants to, has submitted a thing on cleaning up of gravel, and so we'll be talking about cleanup. And then we have with Elsie that's going to come and talk about bears, because we're in buffer zone, or part of Miller Creek is in the buffer zone, and I know they've changed some of the time schedules up there for garbage pickup, so there'll be some discussion about that. And then we have an individual that has contacted Jane and I about pedestrian and some bike, and whether anybody is from the Miller Creek area on or involved with some of the community or transportation plan that's going on with bikes and pedestrians and sidewalks and things like that. And I do know that like the new school that's going in on Lower Miller Creek, Jeanette Rankin School, and that additional phase later out will be some more sidewalks in that area for the school. So we're hoping that individual will be able to come and talk to us about some of the things that they're involved with in that neighborhood area. That concludes my report.
Jeff Stevens, South 39th Street Neighborhood Council. We are hoping to schedule a general meeting for April or May of this year, and we may contact the Moose Can Gully Neighborhood Council and explore the possibility of having a joint meeting. So that's about all I've got. Thank you.
Kathleen Gamar from Rose Park. We are going to have our leadership meeting on February 28th, which is next week. We'll be discussing whether we're going to change our meeting place. A couple of suggestions have been the Senior Center or the Cafe Dulce. And the other thing is we're going to be talking about the bus tour. And that is it for now. I don't know anything more since we're meeting next week. Thank you.
Tim Kars with Moose Can Gully. Thankful for the city to keep our streets clear for us to get up on our hill and to Moose Can. We have a little bit of a congestion on 55th Street that cut across Moose Can with the new design of the street and parking. There's no parking signs telling people not to park on this side or that side, so it causes some problems with the snow over the curbs that were yellow during the summer. But we are surviving. We are going to have a leadership meeting soon. It's been forever since we've had a leadership meeting in our area. So that'll be coming soon and hopefully before the next meeting here. That's all.
Anthony Joe, Captain John Mullen. We just had our leadership team meeting on Tuesday, February 20th. We had Genevieve Marsh come from Garden City Harvest. They're hoping to put in a community garden on Sirens Road, which is right by Hellgate Elementary. So we sent out surveys on, help out, spread the word, and try to get some community feedback and see if anybody's, really opposed of having a community garden over there. And we also talked about a second entrance to the 44 inch area. I think it's called Chuck Wagon. Yeah, I think we just got a letter from Karen saying that it looks like it's planned for out to bid for this spring and hopefully start construction summer.
The survey that you sent out about the community garden was via the city's survey, or?
No, it was just a Survey Monkey survey.
Ooh. And then I wanted to just clarify that garden is part of a development proposal across from Hellgate Elementary, right? That was already approved. I know that was approved. Okay, thanks.
Ron Larson, Grant Creek. It's generally quiet up there so far this winter, but I wanted to say thanks to the group for the award for the Grant Creek's Trail Committee. They did an admirable job, and I think we can all appreciate their tenacity and their creativity, and they probably will provide a template for other projects around it, because that was just a really productive committee. And they've got some more work to do from the end of the Grant Creek Trail on up to Snowball Road. The only other item is that I appreciate the presentation tonight concerning melt and fire awareness and the meetings that he talked about coming up in this spring. We, of course, will promote their meeting the 27th, I believe, up at the Grant Creek Best Western. And it's a continuing educational effort concerning fire, which we will promote and address during our leadership team meeting and our general meeting, which will be coming up this spring. So that's all. Thanks.
Mark Foss, Southgate Triangle, and newest member of the Community Forum Leadership Team. Of course, we have the Brook Street corridor there, so there's lots of buildings coming up and going on, and we're looking forward to Cowboy Flats coming in. And our next general meeting will be on April 11th, and it'll be held at the Southgate Mall. So that's about it. Thank you.
Am I up? Oh.
I just wanted to say one thing. The brochures that Michelle is passing around came from Big Sky PR.
Okay.
And they were going to come tonight and talk during public comment, but they couldn't make it. But they said they did request to do a presentation next month here at Community Forum.
Sorry. Thanks, Jane.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Okay, Michelle?
I passed out a flyer, and I hope that you find it helpful. And I wanted you to know that you can just Google MDT Van Buren, and the first thing that pops up is the website that's listed on the back of that flyer. They came before city council committees this week, and I appreciated the team that came. It's the same folks who did the Madison Bridge project, and I don't know about you, but I thought that they were really good communicators. They got the word out really well, and so I feel confident that they'll do that with this project. I don't know if you ever looked at the live feed cam that they had with Madison, but they won't have one with this project, so don't get your hopes up. As it says in that flyer, they're taking out something like 80 trees and 80 bushes, and they're replacing 80 trees. Turns out that not being able to see because of bushes is not ideal. And so they're not replacing all of the bushes, but they are, updating the project with 50-year newer landscape thoughts, and that will be good. So, hold your questions for when they come to Community Forum, but do be aware that those trees will be taken out soon, because they have to do it before the migratory birds come back. It's part of the Migratory Bird Treaty of 1918. And so I think it says in there that they're taking them out like in April. Yeah. And so there will be a delay between when the project is and the replacements are and when they're taking out because of this Migratory Bird Treaty Act. That was my first item in things that have been happening at City Council. The other one that's related to Van Buren is the council finalized the plans for a sidewalk project between Lilac and Missoula, so that's quite a bit further north. But is an interesting sidewalk project. If you care to learn more, you can by searching it on the city website, or I could always email you the link if you wanted to. Feel free to email me at any time. If you're ever wondering what's going on at City Council, I'm happy to share information. The third thing on my list was the smoking ordinance. So next Monday at City Council, which is almost every Monday at 7 p.m., we'll be having a public hearing to update the smoking ordinance, which we passed one like 1999, I think, and haven't updated it since. And in 1999, we were cutting edge, and now we're woefully behind the times. 3 major things are happening with that. One, it's adding vaping to the definition of smoking, and this is consistent with state changes to the Clean Indoor Air Act. 2, we're explicitly indicating that you can't smoke on some park grounds. And so this is different than like at City Hall, you only have to be 25 feet from an entrance, but you could smoke 26 feet away. And the 8 locations which are like all playgrounds, the Bancroft Pond, 6 other things, the Fort Missoula, 5 other things. They are explicitly not allowed to be smoked upon within the limits of the area. And then the third thing is that it will allow folks like people who have sidewalk cafes to, if they want, put up signs that don't allow smoking within the area of that cafe or like, you know, the footprint of the business. Because they could do that before, but there was no oomph behind it. And so if folks were to be out of compliance on either the parks or in like a cafe situation, the managing entity, which is like parks staff or the owner of that business, is the primary enforcer. And so they would be the ones that would be needing to say, you can't smoke here, we have it posted, it's against the city ordinance. We're not trying to have people driving by calling the 911 about people smoking, and nor does it just like disallow folks smoking and walking by. It would be people, that's a sidewalk example. It would be people who would be there for a period of time. And then if they decline to comply, only then would it then turn into any sort of a higher enforcement. And we hope that that wouldn't happen. So those are the 3 main changes, along with a slew of other like formatting stuff similar to what we saw with the bylaws, just stuff that you update when you haven't looked at something in 19 years. There has been some opposition that has been sent to council, and so I anticipate a lively public hearing, and we'll see if it passes on this upcoming Monday. If you have feelings pro con, do feel free to email council. You can always do so. I can't remember our group email address right now, but I'll pull it up by the time I'm done talking. The 4th of 5 things is we are talking about the Missoula Public Library as it relates to a right-of-way vacation, which you don't need to remember what I'm calling it, but because of this right-of-way vacation request, we're having an in-depth discussion about what the public-facing sidewalks of that project will look like. As you probably know, the library is moving from its current location to 1 block east, and so it will be entirely new. And there is some disagreement between the library and the Parks Department, and you know, like various city agencies feel differently about this, but about particularly the Front Street side and whether or not there should be curbside sidewalks, which means a sidewalk right on the curb, right on the street, or boulevard sidewalks, which means there would be sidewalk and then grass and then street. And so that's continuing to come before City Council committee. It hasn't reached the place of City Council Monday night public hearing, but it will in the next month. And so if you care about pedestrian access and sidewalks and the library, that's happening now, and your voice is appreciated, and those of your neighbors is appreciated. So again, you can email group, the City Council as a whole, or see when those are coming and come in person. And then I wanted to mention 2 proclamations that have happened since our last community forum, because I think that they're substantial and noteworthy. One, the University of Montana had its 125th anniversary, which I just found out was the reason there were all those fireworks on the 13th. If you were wondering why there were all those fireworks, but that's exciting. Obviously, it's an important piece of our community. And then on a less cheery note, there was a proclamation a couple weeks ago about murdered and missing Indigenous women, and I just want to help spread the word about this. Native American women in the United States have been raped, beaten, or stalked by an intimate partner, nearly half of them. They are, as a group, more than 2.5 times more likely to experience sexual assault 1 in 3 will be raped in her lifetime. A Native woman is more likely to die by homicide than by illness, including diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. Intentional homicide has been the 3rd leading cause of death for Native females aged 10 to 24. And on some reservations, Native women and girls are murdered at more than 10 times the national average. So it's a big deal. It's a problem, and I feel like folks are doing a good job of getting the word out about murdered and missing Indigenous women, and awareness can do a lot of things for a problem, and so I wanted to do my part. So that's what's been happening, and then I had 3 things to talk about in relation to what's coming up. First, the City Council and committee will hear, again, suggestions for restriping 5th and 6th Street. It doesn't have a time. Again, so I'm not sure when it's coming. I think it's in the next 2 weeks, so soon. We've already received submitted comment from at least 2 neighborhoods, and so I think it's a contentious issue, whether or not we should change those 2 one-way, 2-lane streets at all, or how we should, if we should. And so if you care about that, as I'm saying in a repetitious way, let us know. We're starting mid-year budget reviews, and lastly, sorry, I see it's 9 o'clock. We're doing something called the CAFR, which is currently escaping me, but super important, and it has to do with the budget. Sorry, I can't find the email. Just email me. It's just like Jane's email. It's mcares@ci.missoula.mt.us. Thanks.
Yes, Jeff?
Yes, Jeff Stevens, South 39th Street Neighborhood Council. I've had a couple of questions regarding the sidewalk reconstruction on Van Buren between Lilac and Missoula. That's part of the street reconstruction project, I presume. Yeah, and I was wondering, when is that going to start, number 1, and number 2, what's being done to provide any kind of a detour around that project? Because I know that's been one of the problems. Yeah.
I can answer I can barely answer both. It's part of this year's construction plan, which is not really an answer, but not next year, this year. And then I don't know the detour plan, but we heard from the folks who talked about the Van Buren interchange that with both of these projects happening this year, we need to have a really good detour plan, and especially for public safety. So I don't know the answer, but Brian Van Lossberg is taking the lead on that, and I would email him or me.
Yeah. I know one of the problems up there where they're planning on rebuilding phase 3 of Van Buren is that there really are no side streets where you can detour around it. So.
Yeah, thanks for raising that, and I don't know the answer, but I agree it's a concern.
Go ahead.
To add on to that, I believe I was told today by Ben that they will be maintaining southbound traffic coming on that part of Van Buren. So you can still get out of the Rattlesnake.
Thanks, Catherine.
Yes, Doug.
Doug Grimm, Upper Rattlesnake. I would like to throw in one suggestion, and that is that on the block where the library is, that Front Street be made 10 feet wider and the land taken off of the new library area.
It is a really big boulevard.
Front Street?
That piece of the library has a ton of space to do. They could even do 2 sidewalks, 1 curbside and 1 boulevard. So, interesting idea, Doug. Thank you.
Well, I just thought, forget the boulevard and make the street wider for at least 1 block. Maybe farther on down toward the bridge, as future expansion, as future reconstruction is done, maybe they'll go ahead and make the street 10 feet wider farther on down toward Madison.
Noted. I'll bring up that you mentioned it.
Thank you.
Next is discussion items to report to the City Council. I'll be making that report Monday evening. And
That would be March, or February 26th.
Yes.
If you are able to attend the February 26th City Council meeting.
yes, I'll be attending that. I'll do that. And then just kind of highlight a few of the things is things about the roundabouts on Van Buren, and those type of things, and noise barriers. Some of the McCormick Park, homeless, traffic calming on California Street, a couple things there. Let's see, then speeding, Beckwith. I'll just kind of pick out a couple more of these here, you know. I know the Brook Street corridor is going to be a thing, you know, that's those big issue with those people down there on Brook Street, down around from Stevens to Reserve. And of course, like River Road, you know, the light signals. Now, those are going to be, because I know at one time there was a proposal for a light right on Reserve and River Road. Is that the signal, or is there a different signal at Wyoming?
There's no light on the road. There won't be.
Okay. Then that looks like most of the critical issues that I picked up on. So, any comments? Yes, Michelle.
Just the things that the city council is already pretty up to date on, like the Van Buren and the Brook Street and the Russell Street, I would say are super, I would mention them and say these are very important to the, but I wouldn't like explain them because we also know about them.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, I plan on keeping this short. All my other ones have been less than 3 minutes, so I just hit the highlights. So, thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Okay, our next meeting moderator is going to be Bert Lindler. He was supposed to do tonight, but he had some things come up, so I took his place, and so, but Bert will be your moderator for March 22nd. And with that, meeting adjourned.